keep it low key, I guess.
I'm actually scared to talk. Oh my god.
Right. That's where you have. So I'll just have a seat for a second. So one, I want to talk about the food drive. So with that, I think because I don't really want to divvy up stuff and everybody's not here, so we're not overflowing in my office with cans that can sit for another couple of days. So what I was thinking about doing, not necessarily expanding it within the department because, we've already kind of publicized it and they know it ends today. But if you guys want to bring any cans or whatever Tuesday, you can. But I think maybe Tuesday in class we can kind of decide when we're going to deliver. Megan was gracious enough to call them and find out kind of some options on when we can take them to our daily bread. So we'll just talk a little bit more about that next week and try to figure out who would like to volunteer. And then, Rachel, were you still interested in doing the Oklahoma City drop-off?
Yeah.
Okay. And then we can talk about that next week because, like I said, otherwise I don't mind doing it. I live in Edmond, so it wouldn't be a huge deal. But if one of you guys wanted to come along and meet the director of Selfless Hands, she said she'd be happy to kind of meet with you guys and take a picture at the blessing box and stuff like that. So I just want to give a quick update on that, on maybe the shifting gears, just to kind of make sure everybody's involved. And I know a lot of people are at OIE, which I didn't really think about that as a problem when they canceled spring break, but as we got closer, I knew, because I know some of our instructors are down there and staff, so I get it. But we're going to keep the show going, and they can just watch the lectures online. So with that being said, our essay 3 is coming up soon. So just think, you guys are almost done with the essays, so I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing because they've been coming pretty fast, but we're almost done with all of the essays for the semester. So for this one, I'm just going to go over it really quick. And some of this, once you read the second part, it may help kind of pull it all together. And when I say the second part of the text. So for this essay, after completing the Clifton Strengths Assessment, which you guys will just kind of hand up to me before you guys leave today, and then I will have an online portal for people who aren't here to submit, because what I typically try to do is make some kind of visual component of all of the scores in class. So I think if we just only have a couple, we will see something, but it's way more interesting when you have more. So I'm hopeful, outside of just getting credit for it, I'm hopeful that people will submit it so we can see that. So after completing the assessment, which you guys have done, and reading Clifton Strengths' book, which you guys will have read the second part by next week, your assignment is to discuss the strengths philosophy, write a reflection on your 5 strengths, and create a personal development plan based on your strengths. So specifically, the first part of your paper should be the reflection concept, working on strengths versus weaknesses. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. We touched on it during the debate, but we'll talk about kind of what Clifton's idea of where you should put your effort on strengths versus weaknesses. Next, identify your 5 strengths based on your inventory results and discuss each of the 5 strengths as they relate to your personal experiences. So with your 5 strengths, what you're going to want to do is introduce your 5 strengths into your essay, and then you describe what they are briefly. Remember, your essays aren't super long, so you don't need to get long-winded on that. Describe what they are, and then you connect where you see that strength in your personal life. So for me, for instance, one of my strengths is strategic. So for me, I would explain strategic and kind of liking to find the quickest route to get something done instead of going all the way around the world. And then I would use my example of, I really enjoy strategy and communications. Like I really used to enjoy trying to develop marketing plans that would get the most reach for the least amount of resources and input. So that's just kind of an example. You want to introduce the strength, what it is, and then give an example in your life where you've seen this strength demonstrated in your behavior, personal experience, whatever. So then you're going to get 4 points each for each of those strengths. Then, which I think how that's broken down, that's not right. Okay, no, yes it is, sorry. Okay, finally address the practical implications, what you have learned, like you've done in every essay you've done, the what you've learned section. And in this section also, You will also explain how you might apply the strengths concept to your future leadership, academic, and career plan. So just after learning this philosophy on, whether you work on your strengths versus weaknesses, or how you've seen that these strengths have been demonstrated through your assessment in your life, maybe taking that information, what are you going to do with that in the future moving forward? How are you going to use that to be a better leader, a better professional, those things. Then your paper should be written professionally, citations and references and all those things if needed. If you quote the book, I'm not really looking for a specific citation on that. Maybe you obviously will bold your concept, so that will kind of let us know that that has been pulled from the book. So make sure you're doing that. Are there any questions on kind of the bulk of what you're going to be doing with this essay? Okay, Erin, do you want to mention anything about the essays, or no, you good?
Sure. I mean, to the few of y'all that are here, I imagine y'all did pretty decent. Of course, in terms of like previous essays, just didn't have any questions. Of course, don't reach out to me. I try not to be mean, but I do give pretty blunt feedback. For the what I learned, make sure you actually title it what I learned and include a what I learned section. Sometimes people just do a conclusion section, but we do want you to actually do a what I learned to discuss what you learned, more so than a conclusion. And then just really try to tie in your course concepts. This should be a really simple essay to do because you're not having to research anybody or do anything. It's a lot of self-reflection. So just keep in mind with that, still write professionally. Don't use do not, like things like that. Little writing tips to help you keep it professional. And I know it's kind of hard when you are writing about yourself to do that, but just do your best to include those like professional writing skills. And if you have any questions about this, again, feel free to reach out to me. No one ever emails me, so feel free to. I'm happy to answer your questions about writing and all that.
Yeah, and definitely, obviously y'all here, and hopefully you guys that are watching, make sure you're looking at that feedback that she does give you. So that's really just kind of your guiding post to know what you need to do to move or to improve, and then also the areas that you need to spend maybe special time on and give special attention to. So making sure that you're actually reading that feedback and applying it to your next assignment.
And I don't know if you'll know how to actually look at Canvas, but I'm thinking about making a little video showing y'all how to look at it, just because I'm not sure if people know how to actually access it. I sort of realized that. So I'll be making a video, so just look for that if you don't actually know how to access your feedback.
Right. And with that, as you can see that the essay 3 is due April 1st. So you have a little bit of time, but if you're wanting to turn in a draft and get feedback beforehand, you turn in by March 29th, and then we'll try to get that turned around and back to you. So you have a little bit of time, but as we know, the semester is flying. So if you have any questions in the meantime, like I said, reach out to Erin, reach out to me, let us know. Everybody good on that? Okay, well, let's talk about Clifton's strengths. Anything that kind of stood out in the book to you guys from what you've read in part 1? Or what was part 1 about?
Then I started realizing how they all actually helped me. Working on a long project that lasts all semester, it teaches you so much through that, especially if it's mine's a group project, and so I learned a lot through that. I don't know, it's cool to just reflect on them. Yeah. Oh yeah, that really did help me.
For sure, for sure. Anything else that stood out to you guys from this part? We don't spend a ton of time on the Big Six outside of the quiz in this class, but I do think it's very interesting. I actually have taken this leadership, well, not leadership, not this class, but taken a leadership class on the graduate level that focuses on strengths. And there's another book that's written like this, but it's written for kind of graduate schools and graduate students and professionals, and it's really interesting how they kind of tie it in, just like how they're doing with these 6 college experiences. They kind of tie it in to, you know, maybe CEOs of companies and how they utilize their strengths in building teams and all those sorts of things. So this stuff, you know, I'm hoping that all of you are feeling that you're seeing that it's very applicable to decisions that you're making now as a college student on how to use this information to strengthen yourself personally and professionally. So when the text kind of gets into identifying Clifton's strengths, so Don Clifton, he was a psychology professor, and what he was realizing back then was that, you know, there's a ton of research on like what everybody's doing wrong and like what makes everybody so terrible, but it wasn't a lot of research on what people do right, like what makes people great. So that was kind of what prompted him to try to start researching this and just trying to figure out what is it that makes someone a great whatever, fill in the blank. So he started this research and then ended up morphing into what we have today, into this assessment. He's working with other scholars and other psychologists too, so it wasn't him by himself. So what he developed was 34 themes of talent. So as we kind of go through this, you have themes and you have strengths and you have talents. I want you guys to be able to identify the different vocabulary there and understand how they work together, but understand them kind of separately apart. So when he was kind of studying this, he understood that a theme is a group of similar talents. So when you have your themes, this is like a group of similar talents that you have together. But also remembering that strength begins with talent. So kind of use this word interchangeably, but remember the core component of a strength is something that begins with talent. So when you're taking this assessment, you understand that it measures your talent, not your strength, because we're going to talk about how you get from a talent to a strength here in a moment. So the ultimate goal is to build true strength, and the talent is the primary component in the strength formula. So to be able to understand that, we want to understand what is a talent. So since we start here with a talent, it's a naturally recurring pattern of a thought, feeling, or behavior that can be productively applied. It represents the capacity to do something, and when you're able to do something very well, you can be sure that one of your talents is involved. So this is one of those things that is a little bit of a kind of natural ability that you have. It's something that you maybe don't have to work quite as hard at as other people. So we kind of talked a little bit about this kind of stuff during the debate a bit. So for instance, if talking to people and doing presentations, all that kind of stuff, that may just be super easy for you. And there may be someone else who maybe that is a struggle, but they can work at it. But it's not something that they just naturally can really just capture a room, captivate a room, get people excited about what they're talking about. So it's recognizing those areas in your life that just become a little, you're just maybe get a little bit of a head start on that ability than maybe some others. Can y'all think of any areas in your life where you've identified that maybe this is a talent, like this is something that I don't really have to work as hard at as other people around me? Time to brag, I guess.
It's kind of like a silly one, but I feel like I memorize things pretty easily. Like if an FFA, like memorizing the creed or like any stuff like that. Like I felt like I never really had to take a long time to memorize it. Like I don't know, it always just came kind of easy.
Yeah, that's definitely a talent. Yeah. Are you good at names?
Yeah, I feel like I'm pretty good at
That's a talent. I'm not so great at that. It's bad, but definitely a talent. Anybody else?
I'm crafty, like art and stuff like that.
Yeah, that is a talent. There's a lot of people that aren't very creative. You know, definitely a gift. See, y'all should work together. Anyone else want to share a talent that they have?
I'll share. I'm an above average writer, which is why I'm so sorry. I don't want to brag about it, but I'm like, when I took the GRE, I had like a really, really high writing score, and I think that's why I got into grad school.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes I know I have to like go back. So if you see your grade change on essays, it's usually where I have to go back and tell myself, Aaron, don't be so mean.
Yeah, and that's going to get us to our next part when we start talking about like being aware of blind spots, which really that your talents can maybe create because this is just I'm so good at it. Why is everybody else not good at this too? So we understand again, remember that a talent is the core component of a strength. So that is typically how the strength starts off, is that you have this talent of memorization. That is just something that is kind of comes naturally to you. But how do we get to a strength? So a strength is the ability to provide consistent, near perfect performance in a given activity. Talents are like diamonds in the rough. So talents are that kind of, have you guys ever been, I'm used sports, ever been on a team where you're just like, man, you have so much potential, and they're lazy and they don't work hard. And you're just like, you could be amazing, you could be great, but you have no work ethic, so you're going to always just be average. That is kind of like what I think of when I think of what a talent is. It's that diamond in the rough. It's that all that potential you have to be wonderful, but they don't take it to the next level.
I think it's actually crazy more when it's something that you love, and you know that person is going to be better than you, no matter how hard you try, and they're not trying.
Yes. I had some teammates, different sports, and I'm just like, dude, if I had that natural ability, like I had to work my butt off to, get to a certain place. But some of these people, it was just, I don't know if they realize their potential, but, as you get older, you start to see a pattern where multiple people are telling them of this potential. It becomes a broken record, and they just seem to get kind of aggravated that everybody's telling how great they are, but they're too lazy to tap into it. So you don't want to be there. And that's why it's important to identify those talents. And I think this philosophy is helpful in understanding where you can take those talents to the next level. So you're starting off as a diamond in the rough, but the finished product of that strength is where you get to that near perfect performance of it, is when it's polished, when it's in an engagement ring or in, jewelry. That finished product that you see in the jewelry stores, that obviously wasn't how that diamond was found in mining. So you want to get to that place, but that's something that doesn't just happen overnight, right? It's something that takes some time, it takes some practice. So acknowledging your weaknesses. So one thing that is important kind of to the blind spots piece. So when you have a strength and you understand that it's something that is you're naturally great at. So say it's one of your strengths that gave in the book is someone that's command. And you're very much like, we're going to do it A, B, C, and D, and we're going to get it done. I'm someone who's going to get it done, and if you're on my team, you're going to get it done too. So being able to understand that may not mesh well with someone who's a little bit more relaxed. And I even noticed my husband and I took strengths in this leadership program I was in, and the places where we clashed the most, it was some differences there. Like I'm very much like strategic, and he's very much like, I'll go with the flow. I can't remember exactly which strength he had, but he was very much like, I live in the moment. I'm not going to worry about the shortest route as long as we get there. And there's definitely some clashes there. Some good, balance, but it's definitely some clashes. So it helped me understand that I need to check myself, that I may have some blind spots that are created by a strength that I have that may make it a little difficult to be around me sometimes. So definitely being aware of the blind spots that your strength can create, just like Aaron said, going back and not necessarily writing as a strength, but we're using that example of like, if I know I'm an exceptional writer and, I'm teaching a class with maybe who are entry-level college students who maybe are still learning what the expectations are. I can't lay down the hammer, quite as hard as maybe I would expect. Maybe in grad school that might be a different story. You know what I mean? Right? So definitely being aware of your blind spots. Then if you understand your weaknesses, then you know where you need to put your time and effort. So in this book, Clifton's philosophy is that you need to put your time into your strengths. I know we debated about that on growth and all of that, but really putting your time and effort into your strengths, because it gives the example that, people are really wanting to be well-rounded and great at everything. And it says in the text that everyone has talent, but not everybody's talented at everything. So kind of wearing yourself out, trying to build every weakness to be a strength is really going to just lead you to mediocrity. You're not going to really be able to be exceptional in an area because you're trying to work hard in areas that maybe won't naturally come to you. So you're putting double effort in a space. So maybe creativity, putting double effort in creativity, and it's something that it's just not natural to you, or maybe there's another area that would be better suited for your time. So wanting to make sure that you're aware of your weaknesses so you know where to put your time at, and you know those strengths and you'll put them there. Then also understanding your weaknesses so you can balance your teams out. So you can find somebody who can be that support for you and help you in an area you maybe aren't naturally as good at. It even talks about apps. If you know that it's hard for you to keep track of things, you need to get an app that's going to help you remind yourself. Because I know I'm like, if I don't write it down, I'm going to forget that I ever needed to do it. So like, it's even gotten so bad now I got to put it on my Google Calendar so I get an actual notification that I need to do it. So you got to understand your weaknesses and try to compensate for that and put different support systems, whether those are people who are accountability partners. For me, sometimes I need that, whether it's trying to get back in the gym or trying to get something done that I'm procrastinating on. You just need to put those support systems in place instead of saying that, I'm going to work so hard to just be so much better in that. Maybe you just need some support to try to compensate for that weakness. Any questions on that? So this kind of little formula is something that I want you guys to remember, and it kind of helps you conceptualize how you get from a talent to a strength. And it kind of gets us a little bit into that competency thing that we talked about. That was a big deal Tuesday. So it says, unlike talent, which much naturally exists within you, skills and knowledge can be acquired. You remember what the definition of competency was from when you looked it up? Kind of the ability to work at something and develop a skill to where you can be successful at it. That was kind of the gist of what it was. So this is kind of describing competency. So when we break down the idea of skill and knowledge, skills are the basic ability to perform the specific steps of an activity, and knowledge consists of the facts and lessons learned. So when we're thinking about this formula together, you want skills and knowledge that are going to help you build into that strength. So remember, like we said, you can have all the talent in the world, but if you aren't putting the practice in, if you aren't putting the time in, you aren't investing time, you aren't committed to it, you're not going to ever get past that place of talent. You will just be that diamond in the rough forever that people see all this potential in. So when we think of this formula, you start off with talent because that's the core component of a strength. So you kind of need that to get to that end product. And then investment. So investment encompasses skills and knowledge. That's what makes up the word investment in that equation. So your ability to perform a specific activity and then the lessons that you learned and the skills that you learn together. So it just makes sense. You're able to do it because you've been able to work and learn about how to do it more efficiently. So you put that together with your talent. That's how you get to a strength. So this is just kind of the formula to help you conceptualize what is happening to get you from point A to point B. Any questions on that? We're not going to talk about this. But we're going to talk about the signature themes. So your signature themes are your 5 most dominant themes of talent. So that's what you guys got on your assessment, those 5 dominant themes. And we'll talk a little bit more about that next week. But just because we're a small class today and we have some time, what was y'all's top strength theme or signature theme?
I left mine on the kitchen counter, so I don't remember what.
Okay, just get it to me.
Sorry.
It's okay, it's okay.
Mine's adaptability.
Adaptability.
Belief.
Belief, okay. Harmony, okay, cool.
Responsibility.
Responsibility, good. And you definitely called and did what you needed to do, for sure.
Futuristic.
Okay, ooh, very good. Oh yeah, I forgot, sorry, McKenna. So that is the area, the top one is your most dominant theme. It's the one that kind of has shown the most strength based off your talents. So it kind of talks about the fact that if you are going to be working to develop your strengths, you're looking at that theme list, probably that top one would be some of the areas where you're like, okay, this is where I'm strongest. It doesn't mean that those after the 5, I don't think I've known anybody who's actually bought after the 5 to kind of see what happens. But after the 5, your 6th one could be something that is, equally as important that maybe you didn't see in your top 5 that you're like, man, I thought I would have had that. Also important to remember that these themes are demonstrated differently in people. So if I had adaptability, I may demonstrate it a little bit differently than you do, but it's still that same kind of concept. So that's another piece on why kind of these essays are so interesting to read, because you're seeing the various ways that people are demonstrating these strengths. So again, thinking of that concept of understanding your weaknesses. So, and not putting a lot of time into building your weaknesses versus your strengths. So talking about the idea that if you're focusing on trying to build too many areas, then you're going to ultimately dilute those areas that you are naturally already really good at. So you're wanting again to put that time towards your strengths. And then the book talks a little bit, kind of what we talked about with the Big 6, is trying to intentionally align your college experience with your strengths. So now that you've taken this assessment, how do you guys feel about the assessment? Do you feel like, because I know we'll talk a little bit more about it next week, but do you guys feel like it was a representation of who you are? Do you feel like it was pretty accurate, or do you think maybe it got it wrong?
I know I don't remember all of my answers to it, but I know when I was looking through it, I was like, oh yeah, that sounds like me. And I even called my mom, and she's like, yeah, that vibes out.
Oh, cool. Very cool. Yeah. Think so. Okay. Yeah, so I think understanding and seeing these strengths that are demonstrated through the assessment, I think is important to where if you know you are better suited in one area to maybe seek specific roles in organizations or specific opportunities that you think can help you, that you'd be successful at based off your strengths, also help you avoid specific things that maybe you're like, okay, that seems like a really great thing, but it may not be a good fit for me. I also think understanding strengths helps you understand other people. It helps you, and we'll talk a little bit more about this next week when you're talking about developing teams and looking at strengths and how the components of strengths, because like we talked about on the smaller scale, is that you as an individual, if you have an area of weakness, you need to find a support system and find someone else that can balance you out. It's the same thing for teams, because the big thing I'll hit on next week is that you as an individual don't necessarily need to be well-rounded, but your teams need to be well-rounded. So understanding that when you kind of have an idea of where people's strengths lies, it should help you be able to lead a little bit more effectively, because you know if someone doesn't work very well under pressure, or someone has woo, for instance, and they love being social and love being around people, You may have to have a little bit more of just, break room conversation with them to get them on board with a mission than someone who maybe is command and really doesn't need to have a lot of conversation. I'd rather you not talk to me so I can do the work. So just understanding kind of how the broader implications of the strength, and of course any assessment isn't an end-all be-all, everybody has their opinions on things. But being able to use this information, put it into context, and see how you can take it with you and apply out, not only just internally, but in how you interact with other people. Are there any other thoughts on the strengths assessment? Or anything from the text? That's really the bulk of what we were talking about today, just with the small class, but just really wanting you to understand that language of strengths. So just quick review. What is a talent?
A natural ability.
Yeah. Naturally occurring pattern of thoughts, behaviors, those things. Do you remember what a strength is? Consistent performance, nearly perfect performance, consistently. You guys remember the formula to get from a talent to a strength that we just went over? Yes. And what does investment encompass? Yes, for sure. So these are things that you'll definitely see on the exam, that you'll want to be able to articulate, and then also being familiar with these strengths. So that's one thing I would kind of encourage you to be thinking about is I'll have a sheet on Canvas that you guys can have that will have all of the strengths listed, or all of the kind of themes listed out, that you guys it will be helpful if you kind of can describe some of those, or at least identify some of those. As far as kind of what the theme is and what the definition is. You'll definitely know your 5 for sure, but if you know others, that'll be helpful for you on the exam. Any other questions? Oh, one other kind of quick review question. So where should you put your effort to work? Strengths or weaknesses, and why?
Strengths, because if you put them to weaknesses, you'll be trying to be well-rounded, but if you put them to your strengths, you're going to be good at, excellent at those strengths.
Yeah, your strengths, since you're naturally good at them, you'll have the most ability to kind of become expert level in growth in those areas, because you already have that natural ability there of talent. And if you try to put it in all these other areas, then you'll end up not having strength and expert levels. You'll just be mediocre and average, because you've had to exert all your energy into all these different areas, and oftentimes areas that you never would have been exceptionally great at anyway. Okay? Well, y'all, that was pretty much all I have for today. Next week, we'll go deeper into the signature themes. We'll also go into the domains, and then we'll talk about team makeups and the power in understanding strengths philosophy when you're building a team. And then we'll just kind of look, hopefully, I get all these assessments in, and I have at least get them in a timely manner where I can create kind of the visual of it. And then we'll see if I considered this before putting your teams together, maybe that would have helped. We'll see. Any questions or anything? Remember, your quiz for part 2 is due on the 23rd, so you want to make sure you get that in. And then again, your essay draft is due the 29th, and your essay 3 is the final, is due on April 1st. And then we'll get into Temple Grandin next Thursday. We'll do Temple Grandin, and after that, we'll have basically come back review, and we'll be ready for our next exam. So it's going pretty fast. Any questions or anything? And make sure you guys too have that either subscription or whatever, you do your free trial so you can watch Temple Grandin next week, because that'll be something that we'll do on our own. Okay, well, thank you guys for coming. I really appreciate it.